Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the first City Center open house. We'll give everybody a second to connect. And then I'll go ahead and share my screen and get this thing started.
It'll be like an hour.
So is it, can you hear me?
No, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I'll mute myself there.
All right, thanks everyone for joining. My name is Nina Najmabadi. I'm with Triba Architects, and I'm joined by quite a few members from the team. I'll go ahead and introduce all of them in a couple minutes. We have a slide. For now, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everybody see the Englewood City Center redevelopment on their screen? Perfect. All right. So this is our first open house for the redevelopment at City Center. And what we're really trying to get here is some community feedback and ideas on the vision for what this redevelopment will become. So go ahead and get started. Just to give a quick overview of what is included in this open house, we'll give a brief intro of the team. And then we'll go over the process to date and the public engagement to date, as well as public engagement moving forward, and the different parts of the process where the community can be involved. We'll give a brief overview of the site challenges and opportunities and some of the considerations we've been thinking about in terms of the vision for City Center, followed by an open Q&A period where we can answer any questions that you may have at the end of the presentation. And we'll try to get there with about 15 minutes at the end so we can make sure to get any of your questions. So this is not the full team, but this is, for the most part, who is present tonight from SKB. It's the master developer of the project. We have Todd Gooding, Richard Moran, John Olivier, and then with the City of Englewood, Brad Power, Dan Poremba, and Triba Architects, Bill Moon, and myself, Nina Najmabadi. And with that, I'm going to kick it off to Dan Poremba from the city. He's going to give us a little bit of context about this site and city's perspective.
Thanks, Nina. First of all, welcome everyone. Thanks for participating tonight. This is a fresh start for us in terms of collective public outreach. I'm the Chief Redevelopment Officer for the city. I work within the Community Development Department, which is headed up by Brad Power, Director of that department, and he's participating here tonight. You may hear from him. Just a little bit of history. The 55-acre City Center area, and you'll see that outlined momentarily, grew out of the redevelopment of Cinderella City, which was a regional mall. That redevelopment took place 20 years ago, when that followed a nice life cycle of about 30 years that the mall had from the mid-60s to the mid-90s. As a kid, I remember the mall very well. Many trips in the station wagon down Broadway to visit the mall, which was at the time a really great place to go to. It was very much like going to Disneyland, so it was a big adventure. The redevelopment that took place, though, after the mall had kind of run its course, City Center 1.0, which opened in the year 2000, was really a trend-setting project nationally. It was a mixed-use, big-box, retail-oriented project that was next to commuter rail. And it received a lot of notoriety, a lot of awards, and it was really trend-setting at the time. But for many reasons, portions of City Center have run their course, and it's again, you know, frankly speaking, a dated, downward trending major property right smack in the middle of Inglewood. And so it's prime for redevelopment. The good news is that the city, either directly or indirectly, owns or controls about half of the original 55 acres. And it's most of that property is in close proximity to the multimodal transit station. The area here outlined in yellow is that 55-acre piece. And then the area outlined in red is the area that had been developed and operated for many years by Weingarten Realty. They were actually foreclosed on in late 2018. And it was that foreclosure that really opened the discussion with City Council about the need and opportunity for redeveloping CityCenter. It's important to realize that that red shaded property was ground leased to Weingarten. And so the city actually owns the underlying fee simple interest in that property, which now has 55 years left on the lease. So we are in active discussions with the company that represents the bondholders. It's a firm called L&R Partners, and we're actively trying to collaborate with them to reposition that property more as a redevelopment opportunity when they go to sell it, rather than their first intention, which was to sell it essentially as a status quo, as is asset. And frankly, one of the things that happened is COVID, which really kind of changed their perspective on the value of that property, and so brought them much more into a collaborative mindset as far as the city goes, and SKB, frankly. So next slide, Nina. So here's really kind of an overview. Again, you'll see the 55 acres outlined in yellow, the former Weingarten property in red, and then the property in blue is the property that I mentioned that's controlled or owned by the city. And we refer to that, just generally speaking, as, very creatively, the city property. And it includes the Civic Center building, the Civic Center garage. It includes the big parking lot north of the station that provides shared parking to RTD. And it includes a lot of additional plaza area, fountain area, and additional land in close proximity to the station. So again, in total, those two parcels, the red and the blue, total about 22 acres. And the next slide we'll go to here shows some of the things that the City Council really considered as the motivations for why redevelopment should again be evaluated. And, you know, some of these, without going into detail on them, is really to reverse, as I said, the negative impacts of a now downward trending, dated, low density, retail focused center. Add hotel, office, residential uses, and increase the density in a way that would make it a more appealing, walkable, and financially sustainable project. One of the things we do talk about is the ability of CityCenter to support a revitalized central business district in total. Many of you may know we have a major initiative underway, culminating in an election, in a special election in November, to try to form a downtown development authority. And one of the goals of that authority would be to stitch together CityCenter, South Broadway, and the medical district in ways that they haven't been to date. We think redevelopment will increase not only sales and property taxes, but generate some significant additional revenues for the city. Amazingly, right now, the city receives no revenues for its various property interests in CityCenter. So we've discussed with City Council the need to really monetize the city's holdings at CityCenter And at the end of the day, you know, all of this is about retaining and attracting Inglewood employers, residents, and downtown retailers and restaurants. Next slide. And so to move forward, the council early in 2019 authorized a competitive procurement to select a master redeveloper for the city property. And the concept was that redeveloper would partner with the city in planning and executing the redevelopment of the city property. The way the procurement was also set up is that it largely favored any team that would work hard to pursue the acquisition of the former Weingarten property and look for opportunities to coordinate and actually control the redevelopment of portions of that property. And so SKB and Triba, the team of SKB and Triba, emerged as the clear winner of that procurement process. It was highly competitive. It essentially took a year. There were many steps to it, many vetting steps along the way in terms of interviews, submittal of RFQ packages, RFP packages, etc. So we were very pleased to have SKB and Triba be selected. And since January, we've been working hand in hand with them on the replanning process. And we're very excited about what's unfolding. The basic steps ahead are that we're working now under a preliminary development agreement. And the goal is to create a redevelopment plan that with a lot of public input meets everybody's goals and is the basis then for a long-term master development agreement that will define essentially a public-private partnership between the city and SKB Triba team going forward that will hopefully stay in place for many, many years. And so with that, I'm happy to turn it back to SKB and Triba. And thank you again for participating this evening.
Thanks, Dan. This is John Olivier. I'm with SKB. I'll pick it up from here for the next slide and just make a brief introduction. I'm Senior Vice President for Acquisitions and Development for SKB. SKB has been around since 1993, and our focus has been primarily on West Coast markets, and it's actually select West Coast markets that include Denver, Portland, Seattle, the Bay Area, and Phoenix. We are a developer and operator of the projects that we own. We also are vertically integrated, so we do everything kind of soup to nuts from ground up development to buying existing assets, repositioning those assets, and then managing all of the properties that we buy on our own behalf. The projects that we develop and otherwise invest in include a wide variety. It's mixed use, multifamily, retail, office, hospitality, and industrial. Quite a wide swath of property types that we've been investing and developing over the years. I would say our focus over the last handful of years has really been specifically targeted towards suburban mixed use and multifamily. And in fact, there are a couple of projects that we currently own on the slide here. The Round in Beaverton, Oregon. Beaverton is a first ring suburb of the Portland market. And the second one there is High Street in Scottsdale, Arizona. We are headquartered in Portland, but have a pretty meaningful staff in every one of the markets that we serve. And I would say second to Portland, which is our home base and headquarters, the Denver team is probably the next largest team that we have. And with that, Nina, I'll flip it back over to you to talk a little bit about Triba.
Thanks, John. I'm actually going to have Bill give the introduction
Oh, sorry.
for Triba. No worries.
Yeah, thanks, John and Nina. I'm Bill Moon. I'm a principal of Triba Architects. We're a Denver-based firm. we've had the great fortune of over 20 years ago working with the city of Inglewood through Inglewood Environmental Foundation and Miller Weingarten, the retail developer, to help imagine what the new Cinderella City could be. And at that time, there were, as you imagine, great ambitions. Light rail was new to the city, and what did that mean? And we were able to basically broker between a retail big box developer and the city of Inglewood and the citizens to dream a little dream. We knew at the time we weren't able to realize every single thing at CityCenter, but what was realized was some of the core infrastructure was installed. So what we hope to bring to this new vision for CityCenter is really more of the excellence of what the citizens dreamed over 20 years ago. We're anxious to hear from you what you like about CityCenter, maybe what you don't like about it, what's missing, what you'd like to see come to CityCenter, and partnering with SKB. We've worked together on a number of projects. We're currently working on the yards at York Street on the lower bottom right. But some of the projects you may have seen around Metro Denver and that we've been involved in and design include Union Station and Clayton Lane and Cherry Creek North. So we have a significant portfolio of commercial development, cultural development, and mixed use, specifically around transportation-oriented development. So we're excited to work with the city and with SKB and you, the citizens of Inglewood, to really bring forward and make this place something that all of us are proud of.
Thanks, Bill. So if I don't jump ahead too much, John, do you want us to talk us through the project schedule to date and the look ahead?
Yeah, thanks, Nina. Yeah, so what we thought we'd do is just kind of highlight some of the public engagement and the opportunities for the community at large to engage with us as we kind of work through the opportunities. You know, our goal, I think we had said this in an early city council meeting as we were going through the selection process. You know, our goal is not to dictate to the community what should be at this location. I think what we really wanted to bring to the process is a collaborative environment where we're working with not only city council, Dan and Brad and the city staff there, and the community at large to really understand what the needs and desires of the community are, to kind of bring to really activate and bring to the community a meaningful redevelopment that is in line with the goals of Inglewood at large. And so as part of that, we've really wanted to engage in a fairly robust public engagement process. This open house being one of the first of a few public open houses, and we've highlighted here on the screen some of the other public engagement that we plan to engage or undertake here. We started the calendar here in June, but I would say that ever since we were selected back in January, we have been involved in making outreach to all of the local property owners. We were involved very early on in the early downtown matters steering committee meetings. But from now until through the end of the year, we really want to continue to engage with the adjacent property owners to talk about how we can collaboratively work together to make sure that the redevelopment of CityCenter really meets everybody's goals. During that time, we're going to be undertaking and working with the city on a master development agreement that'll kind of spell out the nuts and bolts of how we would actually execute on the master development. We'll talk here in a minute about the informational website that we put together in collaboration with the city, which not only includes information about the redevelopment, but also has a survey associated with that so that we can start to garner some feedback from the community. As I mentioned, we've got a couple of public open houses, this one being the first. Through the end of the year, we're going to continue to work with some of the other stakeholders that include RTD, the Museum of Outdoor Arts. We're going to continue to work with Downtown Matters, and then obviously work closely with City Council through a couple of public study sessions where we'll talk about some of the feedback that we've collected through this public outreach, talk about some ideas, and really start to solidify a solid redevelopment plan for the project. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Nina and maybe talk through the website a little bit.
Sure. So as John mentioned, we have put together a website in collaboration with the City of Englewood. This is a web page featured on the City of Englewood website. So I have the web address featured up here in blue at the top. You can also easily access this just by Googling Englewood City Center. And this is really the best source of information on background, context, the history of the site, and some of the guiding principles behind the redevelopment and the vision. There's also links to both TRIBA and SKB's websites, so you can learn a bit more about the team and the portfolios that we both have, as well as opportunities to join in on the conversation. As John mentioned, if you scroll all the way to the bottom of the website, there's a link for a community survey. And this is really a great way to give direct feedback. There's a lot of comment boxes, so you can give your own thoughts if there's something beyond the questions that we've asked. There's also links to other documents. We've done transit-oriented, or excuse me, station area plan analysis. So looking at some of the precedents around Denver, in the region, and even in some in Portland. There's also links to past city council sessions, and we'll continue updating the site throughout the project. So this is really the best base for the project moving forward. And with that, we're going to move on to, we're setting up for a first poll, but want you to take a good look at the city center boundary. And this is what we're focusing on, because we'd like to hear a little bit about our audience. So bear with me as I launch my first poll. But please let me know if you can see this poll. Good? Great. So please select all of the choices that best describe you. You can choose multiple. 1, I live in Englewood. 2, I live in Englewood City Center boundary. 3, I live in a neighborhood immediately adjacent to the Englewood City Center boundary. 4, I live in Englewood. 5, I live in the Englewood City Center boundary. Or sorry, I work in the Englewood City Center boundary. 6, I don't live or work in Englewood, but I visit Englewood City Center on occasion. Or 7, other. We know that's quite a few options, so thanks for bearing with us.
Should we have like the Jeopardy music playing in the background as people fill this out?
Next time.
Next time.
All right, we'll give it a couple more seconds here. All right. So, looks like a lot of us live in Englewood and also work in Englewood. I am an other, also a 6, I guess. All right, thank you. We will keep moving along here, and there will be more polls throughout. So with that, John, would you like to talk through some of the challenges and opportunities on the site?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nina. So, you know, the great thing about the Englewood City Center redevelopment is, you know, you've got lots of challenges, but with each challenge, you've got lots of opportunities. So we thought we'd just kind of lay out a few of these as we see them today, just to give everybody a sense of how we're kind of peeling back the onion there in the Inglewood City Center redevelopment. And first and foremost, maybe talk about a few challenges. We've kind of bullet pointed, made a bullet list there of both the challenges and opportunities, and I won't go line by line, but I'll just mention briefly a couple of the ones that kind of stand out in each of these categories to us as we've continued to work on this. And we officially got our pre-development agreement with the city underway in June, but had been working pretty closely with the city even since early January. And quite frankly, we had been digging into a lot of the materials over the previous year-long vetting process. So we've had a lot of time to really try to understand the both the challenges and the opportunities here. And from a challenge perspective, I think that a couple of the major challenges, and I'll just kind of talk about a few of them. Probably the two largest have to do with the ownership and control of the various parcels, and then the RTD parking. And as to the first one, you'll kind of get a sense, each of these parcels as they're laid out, while the city has a meaningful amount of control over each of these parcels, there are still folks that either own the underlying fee. So for example, the Inglewood station parking that's located in the upper left corner there, that is the actual ownership of that property is not within the city. The city has a long-term ground lease on that property, which is certainly helpful. But that is one of the challenges that we have to sort out, is how we're going to tackle redevelopment of that parcel as it relates to the fact that the city does not own the underlying fee simple interest in that parcel. The other area as it relates to the ownership is actually the Weingarten parcel. The city, while they own the underlying fee interest in the Weingarten parcel, which is now controlled by L&R, as Dana mentioned earlier, the L&R and ultimately the whoever acquires that parcel from L&R as the special servicer would have a long-term ground lease. And so the ground lessee, as it were, would have control over what happens with respect to that property in the near term. Certainly the city has ultimate veto rights if the ground lessee were to want to change any of the footprints or the development there. But if the person that has the control of that ground lease desires to keep all of those buildings and improvements intact, they would have the right to do that. The good news is we've been having a very good dialogue with L&R, and we think there is a path forward to achieving redevelopment of the parcels that they control. The second challenge as we see it is the RTD parking. Currently, right now, RTD has rights to about 900 parking spaces in and around the immediate city center site, which creates some challenge as it relates to the redevelopment, because we have to figure out how to efficiently use the land area, which we think, to really activate City Center. We'd like to see some development there that includes residential, potentially a hotel, and office, civic uses, and so forth. But we've got to figure out how to get all of those uses in the area of the city center while still trying to accommodate a bunch of the RTD parking. That said, we think that there is a lot of opportunity here. You've got a really great station area for purposes of the light rail, just access to the light rail, opportunities to really connect to the Broadway corridor, to connect to the medical district, and to really rethink how all of these land areas are utilized. What goes into those land areas? Do you really need 5 acres of surface parking for RTD. What could we do to rethink the uses in those areas? And so those are the kinds of things that we're continuing to work through and think about. And I guess Nina, if you want to fast forward one slide here to the RTD slide.
Yep.
I think this is I think
Taking a
illustrates
second.
the other. Are you able to get that going?
Yeah, just one.
No problem.
It's moving a little slowly.
That's all right.
Okay.
So we have a slide that we received from or we have it's an origin map that actually came from RTD that shows where all of the parkers are coming from that park in the Inglewood Park and Ride. And as you can see here, that while you do have a meaningful number of folks that are coming from the city of Inglewood, you have a fair number and perhaps a lion's share of the parkers are not coming from within Inglewood. And so the issue that we're trying to resolve is how to find the right amount of parking to really help us activate CityCenter and bring some additional uses to the CityCenter area while maintaining some level of park and ride. From our perspective right now, the city of Inglewood is shouldering a large burden of parking for RTD as it relates to folks that are not necessarily citizens of the city of Inglewood. So it's finding that right balance with RTD, which is the other major challenge that we're working on right now. And so with that, Nina, I think you might have a poll or two.
We do. We're going to have back-to-back polls here. So we want to get a sense of ridership or use of park and ride. So how often do you currently use the park and ride at Inglewood City Center? 1, daily, 2, weekly, 3, monthly, 4, a few times a year, 5, never, 6, other. And you can also think about this not in the context of COVID, but just think about this in terms of your regular use of the park and ride. I know it's a little bit complicated this year. Okay, we'll give folks a couple more seconds. All right. So it looks like the majority was a few times a year. Keep on moving here to the next poll. Sorry, I have a freezing presentation.
That's the way it always works.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here we go. All right. So in reference to these images, we're trying to help explain some of these concepts. So which image below best describes the type of enhancements you'd like to see at a redeveloped Inglewood City Center? And feel free to choose multiple. Pedestrian and bicycle improvements would be 1. 2 is enhanced streetscape. So you can see enhanced plantings, street furnishings. 3 would be outdoor dining. 4, mixed use development with sort of active ground level, and then residential or commercial or some other use above. 5, other. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll. Show the results. Overwhelmingly mixed use with outdoor dining. Could be both, which is good news. All right, perfect. And we're curious about what that other is, so remember that for the Q&A at the end of this, please. And that goes for all of the polls, actually. Any other? So here we're looking at a site plan and the way we've been some of the considerations we've had in mind in analyzing the site. And we're really breaking it down into different blocks. So you can see Block A here at the north. Cushing Park is just to the north of this. Block B is here where the current Civic Center building is, as well as a former 24-hour fitness. And then it also includes this lot here at the corner of Hampton and Inca Street. And then Block C is here where with the current retail facing Inglewood Parkway. There's also the Harbor Freight down here. And then Block D is over here with Ross and Petco. And some of the biggest things we're thinking about is how to really make a neighborhood here. What's gonna make people excited to work here, live here, and visit here. We're thinking about connectivity within the site, the street network that really favors pedestrians. It helps people access different parts of the site, activate retail, and create a thriving economy inside of City Center. But also connecting into the activity that's happening on South Broadway and just downtown Englewood in general. So really reinforcing these connections in Englewood.
Yeah, and I think, I'd kind of add on to that, as you look at the kind of the circulation and the street grid and so forth here, this is obviously a little different than what exists today, but we just kind of took a stab at laying out how the street grid might work as a real, in the context of redeveloping these blocks, Block A, B, and C. And we've spent some time thinking through what you might put on each of these blocks, but what we really want to do is hear feedback from the community about what they'd like to see within the city center area. And the right there at Block B, where the Civic Center building is, you've got a nice big area of property there that you could really do something interesting. I think right now you've got a roundabout and you've got a public park, which is certainly a nice feature. But we thought, what are the possibilities here? We really wanted to take a step back and take a hard look at, what if we just rethought everything as it relates to the city center area? And that includes public spaces. How would we think about redesigning public spaces? How would we think about redesigning or rethinking the buildings that exist down and around the city center area? And so I think, not trying to jump ahead here, Nina, but one thought was looking at the Civic Center building. I mean, the reality is that the Civic Center building sits in a former department store. And there is, as you walk through that space, it's nice and spacious, but there's probably a lot of space that's inefficiently used, which probably leads to higher operational costs for the city to maintain that space. And because it was designed as a department store, probably doesn't lend itself to a lot of natural light and other, for lack of a better term, amenities that a lot of folks working in an office would appreciate these days. And so we thought, well, what would it look like if the city center building if we rethink where the city goes and relocate them somewhere else on the site in another building? What opportunities would that open up in Block B? And by no means is anything on this plan set in stone. It's really just here to really to evoke some thought and feedback from the public here tonight.
So I'm going to jump ahead to the next slide because I think it helps explain that a little bit as well. So here, John was referencing looking at Block B without the current Civic Center building and how we can sort of break down this large block into developable blocks that creates connectivity through the site, makes a more walkable pedestrian experience, and then you can have street fronting developable, either commercial, some retail, residential, and this is just one idea. But these are some of the thoughts that we've been focusing on over the past couple of months. Did you want to add anything to that, or do you want to jump in to get some feedback?
Yeah, well, Dan or Brad, if you all have anything, I don't know if you all have anything to add here, but yeah, I think we've kind of covered the nuts and bolts from our perspective.
I think so, John. Nice job. I think this is a good foundation from which to continue the discussions and, you know, start to gather public input.
Yeah, and I guess the only other thing I might add is, you know, as I mentioned before, this is something we continue to iterate on and work through. In fact, we had a 2-hour meeting between the SKB and Triba team today to sit down and continue to think about how we would envision many of these spaces coming together. And as you'll notice here, there's quite a lot of public infrastructure that's happening in these in each of these slides in terms of moving streets, how the streetscape starts to work, and really activating that. And so I just wanted to circle back briefly to something that Dan had mentioned earlier in the presentation, which is the Downtown Development Authority that is up for vote in November, and working to establish this this entity that will help facilitate redevelopment. And that is exactly what this Downtown Development Authority has the capacity to do, is to help through a variety of funding mechanisms, help fund many of these public improvements that will enhance streetscapes, enhance circulation and public spaces. And so it is a meaningful tool in terms of revitalization and redevelopment, and we would really encourage any of the folks that are watching here tonight to investigate further what the Downtown Development Authority really means and what it could do for the city of Inglewood.
So we also wanted to include some images that really help convey some of the ideas we've been talking about. To the left of the page, I'll let John talk about it a little bit more, but this is an SKB project in Oregon that's right along trail, I'm sorry, not trail, a train line. It's really similar to Englewood in that sense, and they've really activated the ground level. And that's really what we want to bring here, and creating a sense of place, opportunities for gatherings or festival streets potentially, building in some flexibility into these spaces to just sort of let neighborhoods function as they want to, as well as some images of sort of retail streetscape and new office frontage.
No, Nina, I think you did just fine. You know, the Round in Beaverton, which, as I mentioned, is a suburb of Portland, is right on the light rail line. In fact, the light rail runs right through the middle of the project. And we have all of the, you know, kind of all of the essential elements that are present at Inglewood City Center. We've got retail above, or I'm sorry, we've got residential above retail. We've got office. City Hall exists right at this location. We've got a hotel that exists at this location, and then we've got some older buildings that are now being redeveloped, as well as a a couple of vacant parcels that are being planned as office, and actually a fairly robust food cart pod, which Portland seems to be known for these days. So a lot of the same earmarks that we have at Englewood City Center.
Okay, I'm going to push along just so we ensure there's enough time for conversation at the end. And I know we have another poll. This is the last one, guys. So give me just 1 second. I know there's a lot of options here, and feel free to choose more than one, but we'd really like to know what types of uses you'd like to see at Englewood City Center. First being multifamily residential, 2 being office, 3 retail, 4 restaurants, 5 civic, government, and library, similar to what's on the site, 6 cultural museums, 7 hotel, 8 senior housing, 9 flexible gathering spaces, 10 other. Okay, we'll give this about 10 more seconds, and then we'll jump into the Q&A. All right, get your last answers in. I see some movement on the polls. All right. So overwhelming restaurants. Actually a pretty good mix of everything, but definitely restaurants. Noted. All right, so let's end on this slide. And once again, we just want to direct everyone to the City Center webpage on the City of Englewood website. We'll continue to update this with project updates and links to any meetings. We're going to record this meeting for this open house, for example, and post it on the website, and we'll continue to do that throughout the process. And if you can scroll to the bottom of the webpage when you're there, there's a link to a community survey. And that is a great opportunity for input. So with that, I think we're going to open it up to questions. So
I have one.
Great.
My name is Josh Goldstein. I'm a former architect. I used to actually work at a company that does what Triba does, and you guys have a great name. I mean, you guys have a lot of clout in this realm, and I'm glad that you're part of the project. I would encourage you to not demolish the old AD&F department store if possible. I know it's a challenge, but with that comes a lot of interesting opportunities. And just so you know, I'm actually doing a virtual reality study of Cinderella City as it was, and doing a whole thing with the mall, but also like an alternate redevelopment plan. If we hadn't just torn down the mall, the things we could have done, cutting it up without tearing it all down. But anyway, that department store is the one last piece of the mall that's left. And it's the only historically significant part of this property as it is. And we were really hoping, me personally, and also the Englewood Historical Preservation Society was hoping that that building wouldn't be demolished given its historical significance, even if it was only built in 84, just its orientation and the way a lot of the way the site responded is actually because of that building. The mall was on a 45-degree angle. Of course, it was the department store. So yeah, it would be a challenge, but I don't think it would be impossible to retrofit that building, and it could be a significant retrofit to fit in this. I don't think that building precludes you from getting all that stuff you're talking about, the beautiful mixed use and the streetscape and all that. I would encourage you to rethink that. That's the last piece of a historical Englewood on this site. And so it's less of a question, more of a comment. Thanks.
Sure, and like we said, none of the plans or plan that was presented, none of that is set in stone. And this will be an ongoing conversation. Thank you for your input. And John, did you have any thoughts?
No, I I think, and I'm sure that other folks kind of share that same sentiment. And we're always trying to be mindful of the historical significance that the various buildings or other structures play in the minds and hearts of the community. So we want to be thoughtful about what we're doing. What we're really just trying to elicit feedback. I think the plans that we put up here, as it pertains to block, all the various blocks, were really just to demonstrate that we're trying to look at all the available options. And so, Josh, your feedback is well taken, and we really want to look at that and see what we think makes sense, and then bring forward a couple of options to the city once we've had a chance to elicit all that feedback.
Fair enough. And just so you know, I think that, I mean, given the high ceiling heights in that building, and you could cut into it, you could cut it in half, but have part of it like some throwback to the old building, so you could put retail in there. I think you could do some stuff at the lower levels, and you could probably be creative and think of some, like a hotel that's built in the bones of the old department store. Not unlike, I mean, this is no Union Station. I know it's no Union Station, but you could celebrate that building in a lot of ways, I think. So, all right, thanks for listening.
You bet.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Were there any other questions? Feel free to just chime in.
Hey, Sue Anderson here. I guess I'm enjoying seeing all the thoughts and the possibilities and et cetera, but not being a planner or a developer, what I'd love to see is 3 or 4 or 5 ideas. It would be easier for me to picture what it might look like if, for instance, you took the option that you showed where you split the Civic Center building into 2 blocks. I look at that area right now, and all I see is parking lots. And I understand that you're only able to work on block A, B, C, and D, correct? You can't touch the Walmart parking lot or any of the ones that are connected to the rest of the Civic Center or the area right around there.
Yeah, that's correct. Because they're owned under separate ownership, it's a little more difficult for us to to change the development profile of each of those properties.
Right. Okay. So I mean, I'd like to see some ideas of, if you left the building, what would you do with it, that type of thing. And I guess, that would help me a lot to be able to picture what it might look like in the future. And I know that there's a problem with doing that. It takes a lot of time to do it. And second of all, then people think that that's what you're going to do, and they get upset with one or the other. So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth.
That's great feedback. Thank you for that. And that again, that is something that we're going to continue to look at, is how we might look at this. If we keep the building, how could we adaptively reuse the building? Is it possible to alter the building in some fashion, or looking at what are the opportunities if we just rethought that whole area?
The other thing that I can't picture is because of the way the parking lot is figured now, you're on, you've got 2 different levels, and you walk into the building now on the 2nd floor. Do you get rid of the parking structure, and then we're back down to way down ground level, and how do you do something with that? That type of thing is also, I can't seem to picture at the right moment.
Yeah, there will definitely be a lot of thought in that, because you're right, there's that large parking structure that's here presently, and then there's a 20-foot or so retaining wall that's more or less where my cursor is. So these are all things that we're going to want to take into consideration, because leveraging that transition can work in our favor in a lot of ways, but it's something we need to think through carefully. And we really just want to use this meeting as it's a sort of tools to then present the next version of the idea. So thank you for that.
For what it's worth, I think that the slope down from Hamden to so the reason why the whole place is in that sunken area is because the mall had an underground parking structure. So the first floor of the department store is at the basement level. And obviously when you come out from like Chuck E. Cheese and you walk across the parking lot, you're at the second level. I think it'd be really cool. I think it's a cool opportunity to take advantage of that grade down and think about the procession from Hamden down through the CityCenter building or around it. And then, you wind up down at the light rail level. But the light rail is also on the second level too. So that whole thing, you could think about the terrain and the grading and stuff to kind of come from one level down to the other. I think it could be really cool. Terrace gardens or something like that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
So I'll chime in. First of all, I think it's a tremendous opportunity, and I'm actually really happy to hear that David Triba's firm is going to be working on this project. I know that they have a lot of examples locally of commitment to excellent, high-quality outcomes. I'm also really confident in Brad's leadership. And it's great to hear that we're going to continue to embrace kind of the legacy of TOD on the site and maybe apply some of the lessons learned. In many ways, this was a kind of a pioneer project in the metro area. So continuing to reduce the surface parking, I think being thoughtful about bike and ped connections, the neo-traditional streetscapes, building forward design, on-street parking opportunities. So, being really, I think, thoughtful about the site planning. And I'm a bit agnostic about the May DNF building. I do think it is kind of a cool throwback, and I love to champion adaptive reuse, and it's kind of a wonder that that building was ever retrofitted to do what it does this long anyway. But just keeping that critical mass on site of the city employees, I think is going to be really important for retail, restaurant, and having AM, PM populations to be successful there. I'm a little weary as far as uses go of large floor plate office at this point, because I just don't think we really know where the market is going right now and what that's going to look like post-COVID. I think with so many people working remotely successfully. I love the idea of intentional gathering spaces and places for food truck pods and event streets that are really easy to close. I think a lot of communities are seeing those as a huge benefit, especially right now with all the outdoor dining. As many tenets of sustainability as can be integrated, it kind of goes without saying, I think, these days, but as efficient, as we can, make these buildings, greening up the sites. And my other concern is just how we treat 285 being a state highway. The typology of that roadway is likely not going to change in our lifetime. It's not going to present a lot of opportunities for on-street parking to support retail or office there. And I just think it's a shame when you have a lot of back of the house operations that face out onto that corridor, which is really unpleasant for pedestrians at best as it is. So giving some thought to how you're going to treat 285 and what that interface with the buildings is going to look like at the street.
That's your entry point into the site.
To the north as well. I mean, as much edge design, I think, because, we can pay attention to. I feel like that huge wall along Floyd will forever be, kind of a barrier to the neighborhood and not really something that welcomes folks into kind of the 2.0 of this site. And then finally, just some thoughts just about district parking. I think we're in a time where we should probably consider parking in developments like this, the sump principles of shared, unbundled, managed, and paid. And I think that's something that RTD has been responsive to in a lot of other communities, maybe even thinking about over the long term, some form of a parking district. I could probably go on all night, but I'll stop there. It's super exciting. Thanks for the opportunity to provide feedback.
Thanks, Charles, for the feedback. I think you've hit on a lot of the elements that or topics that we've really been trying to analyze and figure out how to issues that we're trying to figure out how to solve. 285 is certainly one of those things. I mean, one of the just to kind of hit on that for a minute, one of the things that we've really looked at is there a way for us to right now the Weingarten parcel has a lot of, if you look at Block C, they kind of have those out parcel, large, big box retail, and then you've got double-sided retail with the parking lots that really serve. It almost feels like it's back of house because you have these just big giant parking lots. What if we actually lined 285 with structures that had either residential or commercial uses, and then kind of wedge the parking between 285 and Inglewood Parkway so that they were kind of, for all intents and purposes, hidden from view, and you've got active, a little more active streetscape on either side. So those are the kinds of things that we're continuing to analyze. But I think all of your thoughts are really good thoughts, and duly noted. We're going to continue to analyze that.
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback on that for a second. Just 2 hours ago, we were having a conversation about these two sites on 285 as being really great opportunities for gateway buildings. These could be really incredible government building sites, or cultural site, or a commercial office site, or even a hotel with great visibility from 285. So I think that there are really good opportunities here, but you're right. Present day, the pedestrian experience is lacking. But I think there are definitely avenues to improve that and really mark this as the entrance to something special.
Yeah, I would just hope that we can continue to give consideration to a bit more porosity and wayfinding. Every time I try to find City Hall, it usually takes me 2 or 3 tries. But I think, again, being a little bit more porous and less insular. I think of the edges of Belmar, and there's a lot of things internal to Belmar that are great, especially with regard to streetscape. But it's kind of getting into it to discover it, rather than just having that more of a walled off insular feel. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and as part of the analysis even today, we were scaling back quite a bit and looking at the sort of regional connections that are feeding into this site. And that'll be a big part of the analysis moving forward in the development of the site plan, to really think about how people are accessing this site. Does Jason Street play a role that connects into further down south? So these are definitely connections we'll be looking into, and I think that's a great point.
Also, I'd like to chime in if I could.
Yeah, please do.
Britt. Yes, hi, it's Britt Fuchs. And just in terms of kind of that gateway potential and noticing that Block A, and then how closely that connects to the Santa Fe and Dartmouth region, and thinking of all of the arteries that come in, it's not just that 285 visibility, and how to tie into that South Platte River potential that you have those commuters on the cycles, and then being able to pull in on that little fragment into the city where you have those people on the bicycle and path. But that not only that, moving those streets, or considering kind of what that welcome feel is like, hey, you're invited into Inglewood, and to really give visibility and intention from all of the arteries, not just only 285, is something. And also then how, of course, this is like, we're talking, when we talk about future, everything's changing even in 5 or 10 years. So how does this all connect to what the potential is for underground transportation potentially? And then also going back to the mention of the original Cinderella City Meeting F building, and the potential for theater, and really already, and enhancing what's already there. Also then adding in that awesome opportunity for the museum, and maybe even a hotel, and just create an experience inside that existing building that connects to Santa Fe, that visibility opportunity there. Oh my gosh, it's really an exciting project. And I'm glad I can, just get a peek on what you're doing, and thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for your thoughts. And I think that's a great comments, and also a great comment about Block A being another gateway into the site, and for bicyclists, for a different kind of modes of transportation. So it's It's a great comment.
Thank you.
I have a quick question about the plaza that you show. I know that this is very preliminary. It looks like hardscape. You know, I worked on the streets at South Glen a long time ago, and we had that Central Park, that Commons Park that we put in there, and we use it for ice skating in the winter and other events in the summer. So I was just going to ask, like, is the intention to have a little bit more permeability in the soft, you know, hardscapes and trees and greenery and things like that, as opposed to hardscape like it is now?
Right, yeah, thank you. This is in no way meant to be representative of the qualitative features. General idea here being that there would be some sort of node, almost similar to what the Village Green is currently, of flexible gathering space. The details of which, it could be an absolutely different geometry, but the idea being that the heart will still be here adjacent to the Transit Englewood Station.
Yeah, Nina, it's Dan. I might just mention in response to Josh's comment there that one of the things we're really working, both the city and SKB are working on, is trying to gain control of that plaza retail space in the Western Art Walks building. There's about 18,000 square feet in there that's been largely vacant and ignored almost for its entire history. And we are looking at really trying to wrest control of that and then use that to activate that public space. And all of a sudden it becomes really a kind of a two-sided opportunity there. And we have some ideas for how that space could be leased and used in ways to really activate the outdoor areas. So I think that's a big plus if we can continue to work with L&R and ultimately gain control of that space.
So I want to be mindful of time. We're a little bit over, but if there are any more questions, please go ahead and ask. Or, like I said, make sure you go onto the website and you can connect through there. Or were there any last questions or comments? All right. Oh, sorry. Were you?
If I do I was thinking of doing a quick concept of what you could do with that building and just throwing it at you guys and being like, here's an idea. Would you be interested? But are you able to like submit stuff like that to the website?
We do not have
an
a
image
box for that.
I figured. All right. Maybe I'll just try and get in touch at some point.
Yeah, I was going to say, we can, I have your email from registration. I can link up with you, actually.
Sure. Okay.
That would be a better way.
Sure.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you everybody so much for joining, and thanks for the valuable feedback. We will, like I said, post this on our website, and we'll continue to do so, but thank you for sharing your time with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, great first meeting. Thanks, everybody.